Today, I want to read to you from James chapter 4 and talk to you about three kinds of prayer: no prayer, selfish prayer, and real prayer. Here we go. The first three verses of James chapter 4, where we read this. Where do wars and fights come from among you? Do they not come from your desires for pleasure that war in your members? You lust and you do not have. You murder and covet and cannot obtain. You fight and war, yet you do not have because you do not ask. You ask and do not receive because you ask amiss, that you may spend it on your pleasures. James wrote about the destructive desires that make for conflict among people, including the people of God. He first reminded us of the fact of conflict. Then he exposed the reason for the conflict, that is, the frustrated desires for pleasure that bring us into battle with one another. James explained the reason for these frustrated, destructive desires among even the followers of Jesus. He wrote, "Yet you do not have because you do not ask." You see, the reason these destructive desires exist among Christians is that they don't seek God for their needs. As James said, you do not ask. James here reminds us of the great power of prayer and why one might live unnecessarily as a spiritual pauper or poor person simply because they don't pray or they don't really ask when they do pray. We might state it almost as a virtual spiritual law that God does not give unless we ask. If we possess little of God and His kingdom, almost certainly we have asked for little. We expect little of God, we ask for little from God, and then we are answered according to our little expectations and our little asking. Then James addressed the problem of selfish prayer. First, no prayer, now selfish prayer. He says, you ask amiss that you may spend it on your pleasures. You see, the problem here is that when they did ask, they asked God with purely selfish motives. Now, this is seen even more clearly when we look at the word that James used, translated here as spend, that you may spend it on your pleasures. That is the same verb used to describe the wasteful spending of the prodigal son in Luke chapter 15. Destructive desires persist even if we pray because our prayers might be self-centered and self-indulgent. We must remember that the purpose of prayer is not to persuade a reluctant God to do what we want Him to do. The purpose of prayer is to align our will with His and in partnership with Him to ask Him to accomplish His will on this earth, as Jesus said in Matthew chapter 6, verse 10. That great preacher of Victorian England, Charles Spurgeon, he eloquently said this: "If you may have everything by asking and nothing without asking, I beg you to see how absolutely vital prayer is, and I beseech you to abound in it. All heaven lies before the grasp of the asking man." Now, when we guard ourselves against the danger of no prayer, and we also guard against the danger of selfish prayer, then we are ready to pray and to receive. And as we pray and receive, the destructive presence of frustrated desire fades away, and we are in the right frame of mind and spirit to get along with others. So today, remember the great power and privilege that God gives you in prayer.